Hello, guys. Welcome to the Sodcast, and I hope that however you're listening to this, wherever you're listening from, that life's looking up for you. We're now, as I record this, on the 5th of November, and so if you're in the UK, you'll hopefully be celebrating Bonfire Night tonight. And if you're not, well, you're welcome as well. So, last one on the last Sodcast was an opinion piece about how to handle people and some other stuff. Here, I'd like to talk about gaming, and how games can be wonderful mediums by which we can explore story, or we can get lost in these beautifully constructed worlds that we're able to really enjoy and just able to get lost in for hours. And I was having a conversation with a good friend this week about popular games. And, one thing he listed off is if you think about some big sandbox games that are really simple and popular, things like Minecraft, things like Garry's Mod, things which, you have at its core, the game is incredibly simple. If you were to rebuild Minecraft as a game, you can do it. In fact, Steam is filled with what I'd call Minecraft clones. You have your basic resources, you have your wooden tools, then you can upgrade to stone, then you get to metals, and you can keep on upgrading. And it's incredibly simple. The graphics, simplistic in the extreme, but it does what it does really well. So well that if you just Google Minecraft creations or anything else, there's people who've rebuilt Minas Tirith from Lord of the Rings. There's people rebuilding towns to scale perfectly. And in one case, someone's even trying to rebuild a whole city, which is nuts. Like a to-scale version of an actual city. And that's a little nutty when you realise there's a reason for it. And one of the tools that we find in these games is we obviously are able to use them to sort of just escape from some of the crapola that's going on in our own lives. And sometimes that can go a bit too far. Sometimes they can go into avoidance. Let's say there's an important decision you need to make, or there's a full process you have, and you need to give your brain space to tackle with it, but it's messy and it's painful to think about it. Now, it could be something as simple as, what are you going to do with yourself? Are you going to, it could be, what topics do you want to choose in school, or what university would you like to apply to? We could use gaming as a way of avoiding decisions which are difficult or complicated and sometimes scary. And then, if you're a bit older, what job should I take? Or this relationship, do I need to break up with this person? Do I need to stay with this person? There are so many decisions we need to make in life, and sometimes we can use gaming maybe as a bit of a crutch to get lost in these fantasy worlds and not really embrace them as a challenge that they should be. So I just wanted to talk about that kind of dark side of gaming. Is a wonderful thing. I'm obviously a big gamer myself, and it has brought quite a few benefits in a few different areas which I go into, but we need to be careful of the dark side of it, where it can become too much of a negative, where we use it as a tool to escape our problems instead of something that helps us. It becomes something that we just use to avoid. If you're familiar with the phrase putting your head in the sand, we can often use video games to do that. The same way someone might turn to drinking, or they might turn to drugs, or they might turn to something that is a tool to escape. And depending on who you are in life, we're all unique in the struggles which we have. And it's very easy for us to look into someone's life and go, oh my goodness, you've had a very good life. You've had a very sheltered life. You can judge people based on how much money they may have, or the surface things that you see, but you don't see that internal pain necessarily. You don't see things that have happened to them in the past, which were, by any psychologist's measurement, traumatic and painful. Yet, because everything else in their life seems good, well, this person should be fine. They're okay. And obviously, a big part of gaming is the multiplayer aspect, where we're able to form these, in some cases, very quick links. If you're playing Call of Duty and you're just hopping round to round to round, you're not going to build any links with your teammates, really. You're just going to hop between match to match, and that'll be it. But then there's other games where you start building links with people that you see on a regular basis. You start connecting with them a bit deeper. And in some cases, that can be a wonderful thing, which I'd love to encourage you to do more of. No matter how much of an introvert you are, as people, as humans, we all crave that connection. And sometimes, if you're a bit, if you're a bit new at that, and maybe also there's some lies you've told yourself about your feeling of self-worth and your identity, this could be one way of exploring that, being able to have links and contact with people. And of course, with the various national lockdowns we've had, many people turn to PC gaming and gaming in general as a hobby, as an outlet, as an escape. I just really want to encourage you to think about, when you game, what's it for? Is it because you enjoy it? Or is it because you're trying to escape? Or maybe just bored out of your mind and just trying to find something to fill the time? All I'm suggesting right here at the start is just to do something a bit scary. If you're willing to do something a bit scary, which is think about the why. Because once you start to ask that question, once you start to think about the why, your brain's going to put the answer to you. But you got to give yourself the space to do that. So as you're listening to these words, maybe you've got me on in the background while you're doing some other task. It could be you're studying, it could be you're working, or it could be you're playing a video game and my boring droning voices, for whatever reason, the narration behind the game you're playing. If you're going to ask why, if you're going to look into that, I strongly encourage you, give yourself some space. It doesn't take long for your mind to be able to give you the answers to some of these questions. But slowing things down and giving our brains that space is difficult. As an exercise, and again, do it in the privacy of a room where there's no one around, so you're not going to feel like a complete lemon for trying this out. But try something as simple as find somewhere comfortable, whether it's a sofa or a chair or even on your bed, and just sit. And then don't touch your phone. Keep your phone on a table the other side of the room if you can. Or leave it in the room next door if self-control is something you struggle with. Ooh, what if I get a message here? Ooh, what if I miss out on this? Give it a try, just even that small, simple exercise, and see what your mind does. In today's world, our brains are constantly subjected to stimulus, whether it be from the games we play or the messages, the emails, the constant barrage of noise. And some of it is self-inflicted in that the music we choose to listen to constantly. If you think about it, for how many decades have we had the ability to listen to music on the go when we're traveling? When did the Sony Walkman first come out? When did the cassette tape first come out as a means of listening to music portably? How long have we been able to do that and isolate ourselves and subject ourselves to even more noise, instead of giving our brains the freedom to think and process? Our brains are wonderfully complex and they're able to do incredible things. But sometimes we work them too hard. Sometimes we overload them. And if we're struggling with decisions, if we're trying to think things through, actually sometimes a little bit of silence is okay. One of the things I'm trying to do in As I Speak is, you'll hear, these moments of quiet. And I'm slightly artificially doing that so that you can hear the pauses. I'm not doing it to be overly dramatic. I'm doing it to hopefully now that was a little test. Did you see that when I stopped speaking? Hopefully, what thoughts jumped into your mind at that point? Like, your brain is wonderful at coming up with thoughts and thinking things through, but you've got to give it the headspace to do that. You've got to give it the freedom where it's not bombarded by music that's going to influence you to be happy or sad or melodramatic. I definitely encourage you to think about that and look at that. For certain. And it's an interesting area once you start thinking about it and looking into it. So I highly recommend it to you. And we spent about 11 minutes just talking about that on its own. Hopefully that gives you an idea as to how important this is. If you take nothing else from listening to me and my ramblings, just try that as an exercise. Put yourself in a situation where you are not on your phone, you're not even reading a book, but you're just giving yourself time to think. Even for 5 minutes a day. There are some wildly successful people in the world who have found it really helpful to build in what they'd call quiet time, where they'll just look out a window for 20 to 30 minutes at a time even. And for myself, I've been doing some reflection recently, and I'm looking at learning some new skills and taking on a new project which is brand new to me and something I've never done before in my life, but I'm excited by it, and it's something which I think I've put off for too long, but I want to get into it. And when I'm thinking about what I want to do and I'm looking for ideas for it, actually the quiet moments, when I'm relaxed, when I'm just chilling and having those quiet spaces, they're where some of the best ideas have been coming from. And it's a useful tool, particularly when we're thinking through problems or we're trying to plan ideas. So let me encourage you on that. On the other hand, you might think, oh, grief, what a load of waffle. I need my music. I need my phone. What if someone messages me on Snapchat? No, you don't. Whoever's messaged you on Snapchat, I guarantee they can wait. What if boyfriend, girlfriend texts me? They can wait 5 minutes. I'm 90% certain they can wait 5 minutes. And if they can't wait 5 minutes, maybe that's something to think about, what kind of relationship you're in with someone who can't even wait 5 minutes. I told you this would be a random series of thoughts and collections, and the next kind of gear shift, grief, I sound so pretentious and horrible, but there we go. But the next gear shift I'd love to make with you guys is think about as you're trying to deal with problems, sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming. And one of the things about problems is that if they feel so overwhelming, we get into what I'd call decision inertia. Well, it's not what I'd call it, but it's what people far smarter than me would call it, where we feel so overwhelmed by the possibilities that we just can't decide. We can't move forwards. Decision inertia can be found over something simple, like shopping for food. What type of baked beans do you have? Is it Heinz, or is it the 50 million other types of baked beans that are out there? Most people choose Heinz because it's familiar. It's what you grew up with, probably. It's what you know. If you want something as simple about choosing your £3 lunch at Tesco's, your Tesco meal deal. Lots of sandwiches, lots of crisps, lots of chocolate bars, lots of drink choices from that meal deal. And all of these, they're not It's not like deciding whether you declare war on another country or not. They're not super important decisions, but they're so small. And when all these decisions build up through the day, your ability to make decisions over the stuff that matters starts to decrease because you're expending energy on all these what I call micro choices. And over time, they just build and build and build. So one thing that's helpful for a lot of people when they're trying to deal with problems in life or they're trying to get ahead somewhere is by making some kind of plan, making some kind of schedule, and then sticking to it. Now, a plan or a schedule or whatever you want to call it, that's not about saying at 9 a.m. I will definitely do this. You don't have to be religious on time, but it's just a simple thing of the day before, you make decisions on what you're going to do during that day. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to nail? And that could be something as simple as, what are you going to eat the next day? What's for breakfast? So that when you're in that day, you don't even have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. You just have it. The decision's been made. It's been done for you. All you have to do is enjoy it. So that when you do make a start on those bigger problems in life, you're not necessarily overwhelmed. And it's something you don't notice. If I were to, do a... oh, pardon me. If I were to do a sudden burst of exercise, my heart rate goes up, you feel the work and the effort that's there. But when it's exercise on our brains, when it's taxing on our minds, we do feel it. We do notice the difference. But it's much easier to just go, oh, I'm busy. I have no time. I'm busy. I just need to work. I just need to get this done. And of course, the problem with that is we end up not realizing the damage that's been done. We end up making poorer decisions in our relationships with people that we care about. Those start to suffer as well. Not massively, you don't just one day decide, oh, I hate this person, can't stand it, but it's in the subtle things, like you start not to enjoy your time with that person as much as you used to. There are so many different ways of thinking about this, and the idea around mental health and how it's a really undervalued topic has, we've made some really good progress in the last few years. But there's still a lot of misconception around it. There's still a lot of issues. The other third thing I want to talk to you about is, depending on what your starting life has been, maybe you come from a really good family and everything's been peachy and you've not really had to deal with what I'd call trauma or great levels of stress in your life. Brilliant. Perfect. On the other hand, you might be the opposite extreme where there's been family problems in your life growing up. There have been issues which shouldn't have happened, but they did. And there's a lot of pain there and there's a lot of hurt that some of that you may still be carrying with you to this day. But regardless of which aspect or which side of the coin you're from, you're united in the sense that life is going to be shit to you at some point. You're going to run into challenges. You're going to run into problems. So as I suggest these things, as I say these ideas to you, it's to try to help give you that slight advantage so you can enjoy life better. It's not that you're going to become Superman by doing any of this stuff. It's not that you're suddenly going to develop the cure for cancer as a result of listening to these very basic comments of mine. But maybe, just maybe, you end up with a happier sense of self. And as you start thinking about, why do we game so much and what do we get from it? What are we doing? And as we start being mindful about the barrage of decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, as we start to look at the distractions we have, all the information overload, whether it's this over here, that over there, just start asking why. And then the third and final area to think about is just, why does this exist in your life? I'm going to say this. You could call this your job, or the topic you chose to study in school, or maybe the degree you're choosing at university. And start asking why this is a thing. And start to think about that with all the things in your life. Even things like, why am I choosing to listen to this style of music? Everything we consume, everything we choose to ingest into ourselves, whether it's our bodies, whether it's our minds, it's going to have an effect. It's going to have an impact. And so once you start to look at the why, once you start to think about the reasons, that's, there's no great magical science to what I'm saying. It's, if you start looking at many, many wonderfully written scientific journals on the topic, you find that we're very, very good at self-destructive behavior. We're very good at harming ourselves in ways that we don't immediately recognize, but it feels good at first, so we'll just kind of carry on doing that. Even something as basic and as simple as, let's take McDonald's. We all know McDonald's is terrible for you. We've all got that. I hope you do. And I hope maybe this is news to you, in which case I'm sorry for shattering your fantasy, but McDonald's, it's not good for you. It's really not good for you. And yet, we love a good Mackey's, don't we? We love that sense of what you get from that highly processed food. There's just something about it. It's tempting. And it pulls you in. And yet, our head knowledge knows this isn't great for me. This isn't the best fuel I can be giving my body. And yet, we happily consume it. Eagerly, even. What was that news story? Again, back during COVID disasters, but there was a national shortage of chicken at KFC restaurants. Oh, there was panic. There was fear and terror and panic. It was something to do with KFC's couriers. So there was enough chicken available, but they didn't have enough trucks to physically deliver it to their restaurants. And so there was a shortage. And people went nuts because they couldn't get their strips of chicken anymore. There's chicken available on the shelves, but there's just something good about the way they do it. We're very irrational. We're very much blinded by our emotional cravings, our desire for things which aren't the best for us, but we want it anyway. In some cases, life is a lot easier if you just don't think, just consume. Don't think about the consequences. Don't think about topics like Extinction Rebellion, where, although what they're doing, I absolutely disagree with, basically their central message is, we're fucked. Within my generation, bearing in mind I'm only 30, but within my generation, we're fucked. And a lot of people are going to get hurt. A lot of people are going to die as a result of climate change. And so they've chosen the extremist version of protest, which is not going to get them any sympathy. But then again, if you look at what's happening to UK law at the same time, it almost seems like there's something a little bit deliberate and insidious. Extra powers are being given to deal with protesters. Now, this group of protesters, we can all agree, these are not good people. We need to get them off the roads and get them gone. But then, once we pass these new powers into law, what about when we start protesting about things like big business in Canary Wharf? Things that aren't talked about much is when there were climate change protests in Canary Wharf, where there are big businesses and big offices and people with big money are, the police were very quick to swoop in and move in on them. We look at some of the challenges of the past when our governments and our police are given too much power, how that's been abused. If you're unfamiliar with American history, bear with me on this, but Martin Luther King was an abuse of too much power by the FBI. They used it to fake letters. They used it to tarnish and target him in a way that is just like something out of a fictional novel. Or if you look at some governments around the world, it's something that still happens on a day-to-day basis. People's reputations being destroyed, people being arrested on trumped-up charges. The director of the FBI at the time really, really didn't like the idea of black people having rights. And so he used his position and used his many, many powers to do something about it. Now, could that happen again? Of course it will. Because no matter how good the systems are, there will always be people who like to twist them and use them for their benefit. And if we were to trust our current government with not sticking their hand in the cookie jar, then look at the government contracts awarded to friends and family members to supply PPE when those companies have never supplied PPE before in their lives. Newly registered companies just to take advantage of sweet, sweet moolah. In the meanwhile, while this is going on, our planet's still getting fucked in the ass. And yes, we have Prince Charles on TV, and yes, we have lots of celebrities talking to us about how important this is. We even had Arnold Schwarzenegger come out, talking to us about climate change is real, it's important, we need to fix it. But it's not going to stop us wanting McDonald's. It's not going to stop us wanting KFC. It's not going to stop us wanting the products of big business. And big business is the main culprit. It's not air travel. It's not even our cars. It's big business. Big business are the ones who are cutting down trees in rainforests. And whilst they say they replant them immediately, it's actually been proven that many of the planting they're doing, a lot of it is toxic, unsustainable, and not good anyway. But it's done because they got too much bad press. So they do it as an appeasement method. If you look at a material like concrete, concrete's a wonderful substance. Makes it cheap to build, but it's also a massive polluter for the planet. The concrete industry alone, enormous harm comes from concrete. And yet, where's the focus? Electric cars. Electric cars sadly won't help, because where do we get the power to charge your electric cars? Ah, that's right. Coal, gas, a little bit of solar, a little bit of wind. But not enough, nowhere near enough. And then, of course, there's the lovely little chestnut. There's the fact that if you manufacture an electric car and fit it with electric batteries, and you keep people using it in the same way as before, and people keep consuming, it's not going to get better, sadly. It's only going to get worse. The only way that we can have real change is if we start making some radical changes in our society and in how we live. But as we saw with COVID is brilliant in the sense of it's showing us what people are like. Now, at first, when COVID happened, yes, we will lock down. Yes, we will do that. But look at how long before the cracks started to emerge. People started breaking the rules. Many of them are supposed leaders of the nation. And if we're honest, the idea of going into another lockdown this Christmas, people just don't want to do it. We might have to, but the only thing the national lockdown says is you can't travel outside your city, you can't meet up in big gatherings. Stay at home. And for that simple change, we can't do it. It stresses us out too much. So what about those radical restructurings of society where we need to look at the work we do, how we work, how we travel to work? We need to look at our food, what we eat and how we eat it. We need to look at even something as basic as where do your clothes come from? The amount of choice and variety we have, the resources we're burning through, the power consumption we have. It's not sustainable. And as our population continues to increase exponentially across the world, it's not going to get better, it's only going to get worse. So yeah, it's a bit of a somber topic this. Now, I've never been much of a big green eco warrior. I'll be honest. I'm probably in the camp of I have the logical head knowledge to know we're fucked now. Because no matter what I do as an individual, and even if I were to get every individual in the UK to stop driving petrol cars, to change, if we made all these carbon footprint style changes, yeah, it'll help. It's not going to put a dent in it. Not really. Not long term. And as the resources run low, as we start dealing with the harsh realities, we'll start looking at games like Fallout. We'll start looking at video games which you've enjoyed over the years and gone, yeah, how did they know this would happen? And I don't mean we're going to have nuclear war. I don't mean we're going to have big dramas. It's going to be more insidious. It's going to be smaller than that. It's going to be much, much more basic, far more fundamental. Basic resources we take for granted are going to become rarities. The nice thing about it is we've got some time left. But at some point, and probably in my generation while I'm around, maybe towards the tail end of my life, we'll see it get really bad. So if you're listening to this, good news. You're going to be okay. You're still going to be able to enjoy the hyper-consumerized mass production culture that we have. As for your kids, well, that's a different story. It does sound pretty stark as I'm saying this. But that's the reality at the moment. And there isn't an easy way of looking into it. There are no quick fixes, no easy solutions. But in the meantime, let's get those nasty protesters off our roads. So we can continue consuming, so that we can continue doing our jobs, so that we can continue buying clothing and products which will continue to hasten our downfall. But those protesters, we can't have them on our roads anymore. Short of society going through massive changes, I don't see how we can turn the clock on it. because our greed and our emotional desire and our short-sightedness is going to get the best of us. As much as we may logically know what we're doing is bad, and as much as we may say, yeah, we want to change, look at the very simple statistic on when people make a New Year's resolution to change their behavior. It could be give up smoking or lose weight or any other resolution. When it matters, people aren't going to do it.